Blog Talk Radio.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. This is the Donelson File. Tom Donelson, normally with Coco Konski, but she will not be with us tonight. But we are waiting for Kyle Hester, who is just joined me right now as we were speaking. Kyle, how's it going, man?
Oh, pretty good. You know how like when everything is you expect time to act a certain way, and then time just does whatever it wants, and then you're running late. So I don't know what happened.
Yeah. Well, like I say, these things happen. Time gets away from us all, especially this day and age where you never know what time it is anyway, what day of the week it is.
Man, no kidding.
Yeah, so it's like losing track here. So, like I say, Kyle Hester is going to be in the famous Coco Konski seat of the left, as he will be replacing Coco and keeping me in line. And we got a lot to talk about here tonight. And we, like I said, we got all kinds of stuff to talk about. The Postal Service. I'm going to ask the question, are teachers less essential than grocery store clerks? The Mideast Agreement. Did anybody watch the Democratic Convention last night? Did you, Kyle?
I did. Yeah, I did.
Okay. Well, good. Then you can give me a report because I was watching baseball and basketball.
Well, come on, man. What kind of political radio show do you have? You got to watch it all.
No, I did see some of. I mean, I did see some of their stuff afterwards. Got caught up, but yeah, I didn't see it live. But I was kind of like, it's one of those things where you're trying to keep tabs with three things at the same time. You have the NBA basketball, the Celtics are on TV. I'm following the Royals baseball on my computer, and then I'm trying to follow the the convention because I am required by my duty and job. Yeah,
I know.
Yeah,
I know. It's hard to juggle all these things, especially when you got some things coming back online that have not been online before. So why is what happened to Coco? She's not here.
No, she's been taking. Basically, she's got several projects she's working on. So
okay.
The month of August, she's taking Tuesdays off for the month of August. And then she's
All
coming
right.
on Wednesdays. So she's like writing a book. She's got several different projects going on at the same time, scripts and things of this nature and timelines. So that's just, so, and
right
special
on,
projects.
Right on. Well,
yeah, so she's doing some special projects, so that's basically it. And, so.
It's good to be busy.
It's good to be busy. But first of all, like I say, if anybody wants to join us, here it is. You call in 646-929-0130. 646-929-0130. If you want to participate, talk, or just simply call on and just say, Kyle, Tom, you're two of the greatest. And I guarantee you say that you might even get to the front of the list. So, and so we got all of those things. And Kyle, before we go any further, so how's Zombies with a Shotgun doing?
Zombie with a Shotgun is good. It's like the way you can watch Zombie with a Shotgun on Amazon Prime free or Tubi for free. What's interesting is that it's very difficult to find a way to like make a movie successful, online these days. So it's almost like you have to have millions of people watch a film, for at least on the free streaming site, for it to make anything. So that's the challenge of doing independent film. It's like so at this point, it's kind of like we're doing it because we like to make films, and it's so just trying to figure out how those films can can continue the ability to make other films by putting them on these streaming platforms. So that's the challenge right now. So we're just wading those waters and trying to figure it all out.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I guess and Preacher 6 obviously was I'm assuming COVID delayed that, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's kind of, like a big giant railroad spike in the gears of completing it. But so it's slowed things down. It hasn't stopped the progress. But yeah, so we're just trying to get as much done as we can in this crazy time.
Well, I tell you, why don't you let everybody know exactly how they can order Zombie with a Shotgun, and plus keep tabs on your what else you got going. If you have a website or Twitter site, if you want to kind of tell everybody right now all of those things.
Absolutely. You can follow me on Twitter, and that's at Kyle D. Hester, and Zombie with a Shotgun, which has its own Twitter site. I mean, if you put a search in for Zombie with a Shotgun, all those things will come up. But it's Zombie WA Shotgun because you can only have so many letters. And yeah, and if you just want to go watch it and support independent film, you can just go right to Amazon and you can either rent it, or if you don't have Prime, or you can watch it for free on Prime. And please leave a review because that helps in the algorithms.
Good. All right. And that sounds good. All right. What like I said, we're going to talk about a lot of things. So I'm going to start off, since you actually saw the whole thing last night. First of all, as a filmmaker, because obviously this is a totally different scenario than what we're used to with political campaigns. In effect, you're almost trying to make a show or a movie all at once, and where you got people at different locations. So
yeah, for sure.
So let me ask I guess the first question. First of all, number one, who was the most impressive that you saw last night?
It definitely has to be Michelle Obama. I mean, she just has such a charisma, about the way that she speaks, and she's really pointed with the point she's trying to make. So I think that she had a good point all the way through. But I think that the challenge with doing it in that format is like each person that's on it has their own situation. Like some people must have been like on cell phone cameras, and some people had, a little bit better situation. So it's really the production value, looking at it from like a producer kind of standpoint and a watcher, that's the challenge of these times, because not everyone's in different places. So it's like each thing is going to have its own quality level, going into it.
Mm-hmm. I think so, because what I saw of it, when I went back, and it was like, okay, it seemed to be like there were, like I said, I would agree with you. If somebody was to say to me, Michelle does what you want that opening speaker to do, set the stage for the rest of the convention. Here's where we're at. Here's what's going to happen. Here's our goals, our objectives. Here's why the other guy's bad. She kind of did that perfect. I thought she did that very well. And she was back to you.
She was actually the last. She was the last speaker on that, but she came in. She was like the closing pitcher. You know what I mean? So you're going to the baseball terminology, and that's what she did. She did a good job.
Yeah, and the other thing too that really struck me, I did not know Stephen Still was still alive. I don't know if you caught the Billy Porter version, for what it's worth, and obviously Stephen Still was doing the guitar in the background.
Oh yeah. I didn't catch that.
Yeah, well, that was like one of the last things, and so it caught me because I love that song, and it's like, hey, the '60s are back, and I have to be honest. I was like, oh, who's that guy? Oh my God, that's Stephen Still. I didn't even know the guy was still alive. I haven't heard or seen anything from this guy in so long. Yeah.
Well.
Yeah, and I thought it was a very interesting. If anybody wants a chance, like I say, if anybody wants to, kind of look at a nice, a kind of an interesting version of For What's Worth, I thought this was an interesting version with the Billy Porter, who by the way, I have not heard of before tonight. Yeah, you got to help me out. How popular he is. Obviously popular enough to be on, the first opening night of the Democratic Convention.
Yeah, I don't necessarily know. I don't think that it's going with how popular people are. I think that it's kind of like whatever is going on currently. I mean, I think that some of the people that are going to be on Trump's convention, like the couple that was standing in their front lawn with with the guns, they're going to be there. So I mean, I don't think it's a popularity contest on either side, really. I mean, I don't know. Maybe I think it's just like trying to make a point with whatever the current events are.
Yeah. No, I was just hold on that thought. We'll be right back. This is Tom Donelson with Kyle Hester on the Donelson Files, the Bachelor News Radio Network.
If you want real discussions on politics, social issues, racial issues, and other topics, then tune into the Bachelor News Radio Show. Listen live every Monday and Thursday from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. Eastern at blogtalkradio.com. And if you missed the show, you can listen every Monday through Saturday at 8 a.m. and 3 p.m. Eastern, and every Sunday at 5 a.m. and 3 p.m. at thebatchelornews.airtime.pro. Listen and be informed.
Welcome back to the Donelson Files. I'm Tom Donelson with Kyle Hester. Call in 646-929-0130. Also, you can if you are on Twitter, you can go at the Donelson Files, and if you got anything that you want to comment, add, or just talk about, feel free to just simply tweet, and we will read your tweet on the air. And so, again, at Donelson Files Twitter, for all those people who are following us on Twitter right now. Okay, and don't forget, ladies and gentlemen, it's Zombie with a Shotgun, independent film you can get on Amazon with our special guest, I should say, not a special guest, he's a routine guest on our show, and a man who, quite frankly, is part of the Donelson File Host Brigade, and a great guy, even when he's wrong on occasion. Kyle Hester.
Wait a minute. When am I wrong? Thank you for all that, man. It's always a good time. It's always a good time coming on here, and just being able to share different opinions on stuff, and I think it's awesome.
Yeah. Well, okay. Let me ask this question. What did you think was the weakest part of last night? If you said, okay, we could have done without that, or that didn't really help, was there anything you would sit back and say, or that there was anything in the first night you would say, God, maybe we shouldn't have had that on, or it really didn't add, or it just didn't quite look good because of the format?
Nothing really stands out. I think that there was just some, like, sound qualities were worse than others. I think that some of that could have been cleaned up, but nothing stood out. Like there was no moments of I didn't want to like crawl into my chair or anything like that, going, what are you doing? You know what I mean? So I thought it was all right. Nothing stood out as being terrible. I mean, it's funny because they're getting like more blowback from for having Kasich on, than anything else, and it's like Kasich is now getting he's getting it from both sides, So I just think that's kind of funny though.
Well, but here's the thing. I mean, that to me was the odd, because I went back and looked at his speed. He was the oddball out in this way. Because I have to be honest with you, if you're going to bring in somebody of a bipartisan nature, why bring in somebody who's a has-been as opposed to is now? I mean, that's a.
Well, I didn't think there's nobody like that now. I mean, there's nobody that's currently in office that's going to come on and talk to the Democratic convention.
Yeah, but I mean, and the other thing, I mean, I guess the question to me would be is that, because I got a kick out of OAC. Cortez really didn't. I mean, she was basically. I mean, I think she's going to be on tonight, and she was basically one of those that, what the hell are you doing on our show? Of course, I think what she was really saying, in my view, was, what do you do taking time away from people like me? But
right, yeah, I see what you're saying. Yeah.
But here's the thing. I mean, you got a guy who basically, unless he's changed his views, has been more of a moderate or a center-right person, pro-life, and if that question is, if that kind of question is, what are you doing supporting, this particular party that's gone that far to the left, in my view, and a lot of people, and it's like, it's one thing when you have moderate.
I think that's a false narrative. I think that there's not really a that far to the left. Like, nothing has happened. There is no that far to the left that's gone on. So I would say, what does that really mean?
Well, okay, here's what it means to me. Okay, I'll give you like two aspects. Okay, number one, the Green New Deal. If you look at the Green New Deal, look at it. Basically, it's a complete transformation where you're going to basically, people don't realize how radical that, proposal is. And you've got Kamala Harris supports it. AOC essentially supports it. Biden has gone 90% of the way with it. And we're talking about where, we're going to tell you what energy source you're going to wear. We're going to tell you essentially what kind of house you're going to live in, what kind of car you're going to buy, so on down the line. And we're going to, this is a complete transformation of the economic of our society.
Well, here's the thing. If we can look at this from a little bit of a libertarian aspect, they already do that now. I can't, living in a city, detach myself from the grid and put solar energy, onto my house and have whatever kind of power I want. So it's like, so if you look at it from that perspective, we're already there, and it has been that way for a long time. So
I actually, in a way, I would somewhat disagree in this particular sense, because utilities companies have the ability to decide which energy sources they can use or not use. So it's not like you're going to have somebody from a top saying, okay, we want you to put 60% wind or solar and no nuclear, no fossil fuels or whatever. That's a totally different picture. That's a totally different picture versus, let's say, the other aspect, when I say, housing or automobile, are you going to have the choice of a fossil fuel car versus an electric car? Or are you going to have, let's say, a small automobile that supposedly gets X percent of mileage versus, let's say, a truck or an SUV? These are the things
look, I think whether I don't think it'll ever be 100% in America, like it has to be electric, but like Norway, all cars by I think 2030 have to be electric. So the other countries are way ahead of us as far as that particular curve goes.
Yeah, because the real trick is going to be, what do you recharge the electric car with? Because you have to charge the electric car, and you have to have a dependable energy source to do it. And right now, it's coal or natural gas that's fueling that car. Same thing. Norway can do all they want, but the reality is Norway's got a ton of oil out, that they can use as the final fuel to recharge your car.
Right.
That's what I mean when you're talking about restructuring. It's not just about, it's a complete restructuring of what, and you're going to literally have people go beyond where we are today, or how to live your life. In my view, we've gotten a taste of it through a lot of these lockdowns. We've gone far beyond in my view, because you essentially have government telling you which business needs to be closed, which business can stay open.
Yeah, I think we did this obviously we are the idiots of the planet. because all these other countries did it right, locked down, shut everything down, everyone stay home, but no, we can't do that because of freedom, and which is that's why we're in such a bad position.
I disagree with that because the Swedes did it right. They don't have, they have basically, you're not seeing new cases of COVID because they got herd immunity. But they said, well, see, here's what I think, because we're getting this a little bit later. We'll get into it a little bit later on this. Now, actually, we'll get into it now. Because here's my problem. If somebody said to me, what was the worst mistake made in all of this? And I say there are two steps. There are two steps, two mistakes. We overestimated the lethality of the virus, and it's as opposed to a limited lockdown where you basically say, okay, you go for the most try to protect the most vulnerable, population. And certainly the Swedes understood the nature of the virus. Yeah, they had quite a few deaths compared to other Nordics, but if you look compared to New York City, they were like 1/3 the deaths of New York City. So if somebody would say to me, I would say the biggest mistake was we overestimated lethality, and I don't buy into it. To me, and I've always kind of wondered whether or not we would have been any worse off. But I will go back to the point that you make.
Right.
Because here's the thing. Go ahead.
Here's the thing. Sweden, the country, has a population of 10.2 million people. That's not even as big as the city of Los Angeles. So it's that is, I know that is, people like to talk about Sweden, and you're talking about very, very small numbers. So they could go, oh, we're just going to do what we want in this city. But when you're talking about a country of 330 million people, which we are, so those numbers are going to be extrapolated much bigger, So, and the reason that only cutting down a little bit of it doesn't work is because of the nature of an infectious disease. Is because if there's some people out and about getting it, and then they're going to go home to Nana, who's in the house in her bedroom or whatnot, and then because it's a particulate in the air, as we know now, that's why you can't eat inside restaurants, because you're in an enclosed space, and then everybody can get it because people are breathing, which is a total drag. But
okay, well, I know exactly what you're saying, but here's the thing I'm going to again disagree, because I'm going to because I look at this every week, the data every week, and here's the thing. Sweden is 10 million, but New York is very similar in size and population density to Sweden. So it's not like there is that comparison. And you can look at it, and I would say to you that, okay, if the lockdown was guaranteed to work, then then let's look at the states that had a complete lockdown. Let's look at those that had a partial lockdown, those that didn't have shelter in place. And you start doing that comparison. And you come up with a totally, let me put it this way, the states that had the most extensive lockdown did not necessarily have better mortality or case rate. New York's a prime example. And you look at the states that have shelter in place, an example like South Dakota. They're weathering the storm a lot better. And even if you look at Florida, and California, two states, both of those states are basically 1/6 or 1/10 the death rate, even at this point of New York. And if you look at their infectious disease rate, the IFR, it's about 1/6 to 1/7. And in the case of Florida, you had a reopening, and even if and they're now on the downside of this virus. So is California. If you look at the hospitalization, they're on the downside. They're getting herd immunity, and they did it. Yeah. Go ahead.
Okay. What happened with California is kind of what happened with a lot of the country, because when we started to go down on the virus count and on people getting infected and all that kind of stuff, in the very beginning, a few months ago, and that's when everyone opened up, just like let's just open everything up, open up bars and open up restaurants and like all that kind of stuff, even at limited capacity. And then everything spiked again. So that's what happened in California after that, because it's like all these indicators are lagging indicators. It's like what happened 3 weeks ago, or the numbers that you're going to be seeing today is hospitalizations. So, so basically, California shut down the eating inside again in gyms and all that kind of stuff. So bars are shut. So it's like all those indoor mass, places where a lot of people get together, that's all stopped now. So, and now the numbers are getting better. So it's shown that it works. It's like this is, you have to do this if you're going to control this thing. And if you don't, the numbers are going to spike again. And we're not even in like winter, not even in flu season yet. So
hold on there. Hold on a thought. This is Tom Donelson, Coco Konski, with Kyle Hester filling in for Coco tonight on the Donelson File on the Bachelor News Radio Network.
Every day I wake up at 5 a.m. to give Dad his medicine. Every day I wake up at 5 a.m. to give Dad his medicine. At 6 a.m. I make his breakfast. Every day I wake up at 5 a.m. to give Dad his medicine. At 6 a.m. I make his breakfast. At 7 a.m. I shower. Every day I wake up at 5 a.m. to give Dad his medicine. At 6 a.m. I make his breakfast. At 7 a.m. I shower. I start laundry at 8. At 10 we go for a walk. Every day I wake up at 5 a.m.
For those dealing with the daily struggles of caring for a loved one, we hear you. That's why AARP created a community with experts and other caregivers for advice, tips, and support. Together, let's help each other better care for ourselves and the ones we love. Visit aarp.org/caregiving. A public service announcement brought to you by AARP and the Ad Council.
The Laugh Cafe broadcast from Maximizing Life Family Worship Center, located at 2920 East Market Street in Greensboro, North Carolina. The broadcast features a Bible study-like atmosphere while taking a laid-back approach, learning the Word of God, served with a free continental breakfast. Listen to the broadcast every Saturday evening at 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time at thebatchelornews.airtime.pro. Interested in having your own show or advertising? Email us at thebachelor40@gmail.com. Listen and stay informed. This is Tom Donelson. Welcome back to the Donelson Files with Kyle Hester. If you want to, call in right now, 646-929-0130. All right, here's where I'm going to disagree with you again on this, because here's the one of the aspects of the pandemic is when it's, to me, the more I'm become more convinced that you need to develop herd immunity. The lockdowns delay herd immunity. What the Swedes were able to do is basically hit that curve earlier. And if you look again, Florida, both Florida and Texas and Arizona and California are all on the downside as far as the virus goes. And Florida is working on a totally different site. And the question is going to be, will they get herd immunity, and is California delaying the inevitable? I believe they are, and I think there's enough scientific evidence to say that may be the case. And I guess the other question I'm going to throw back to you is this: how long do you keep something locked down and suffer the economic consequences as well? Because there's only so much lockdown and economic lockdown you can do before you start crashing things to a point beyond repair.
Well, I think it's just we're all, human beings are fairly smart. I would like to think, and the people that are adapting it. I mean, like here in California, like people are moving gyms outside, and there's people that are doing exercise and stuff like that, like in the parking lots, and restaurants are now like taking over the sidewalks and having like their restaurants, instead of being closed, are now like outdoor restaurants with tents, and Denny's doing that, and basically taking up a third of the parking lot with outdoor tables and whatnot. So I think that you can continue to make money, and which is important, so that people are working. It's like I'm in the worst part of the situation right now because being in the film industry, because everything's shut down. Unless you have money for testing and all of that kind of stuff. Well,
here's the interesting, because here's the thing when I look at, because the other thing I'm going to look at here is Because like I say, I'm a political operative, so I keep tabs of these things. I also work for a foundation, and every week, we look at several things. We look at unemployment. We look at one of the things that I look at very carefully is unemployment claims. Are they going down? They're going up? Because that's going to tell you what the employment number is going to be shortly thereafter. And then I look at death per capita. I look at total deaths. And I had a researcher will be on next week, Wilford Riley, next Wednesday. Send me some data on bankruptcy. And and to me, there's a combination factor here. And this is because it's not. We're missing the part of the picture. We're missing is that the economic side does matter, and there's a point in time when you got businesses who may never open up again. Period. In all of this, and that matters as well. And
definitely,
that to me is awesome. That to me, and it's almost like businesses. And I think, quite frankly, this is to me and I mean, I've made this statement. Coco's disagreed. I know you're going to disagree with this. It's time to live with the virus. Learn to live with the virus. I mean, mainly because it's, as I stated, it's nowhere near as lethal as we thought. Basically, I look at it as double the flu, if you look at it statistically analysis, with an emphasis on the fact that if you're senior, you're more likely to suffer the consequences of the respiratory side versus the flu. And so my question, and that to me is, in 57 and 68, we had a pandemic very similar in lethality. Different virus, it was the flu, but certainly different in lethality. And that to me is we didn't shut down the economy in both cases. In the case of in 1957, the other problem we have is we don't have a whole lot of data of impact of pandemics on the economy. We have, we know that during certain pandemics, the economy went down, but we never had that study. What was the pandemic? What was certain government policies, like 1957, where you, in effect, had tightening of the monetary policy, may have led a little bit over tightening, may have led to a recession, but you also had a pandemic, which millions of people were out of work because they were sick for a couple of weeks. I mean, they were out because they were sick a couple of weeks, and the unemployment went from like 4% to 7%. But it certainly did go to 14%, like we have right now. And I think this is why I'm going to go ahead and let you follow up on that. Go ahead.
Yeah, well, I think that the situation it's not where we are ready to. It's like I don't think it's not me and it's not you. It's no one can say we're just going to have to live with this, because then you are saying that you don't care who gets sick and who doesn't, because there is a timeline for getting a vaccine on this, and that's herd immunity. Is a vaccine is herd immunity. So if we're like only 6 months away and we have to deal with this for another 6 months, and you lock everything down for 6 months, and then those people, those next 170,000 people that are going to die, maybe won't die because we locked down while we're waiting for the vaccine. So yeah, I completely disagree with that.
Well, yeah, okay. Here's what I'm going to do. The problem that I have with that argument is very simply put. First of all, number one, if you look at the virus and say, okay, when I say look at the virus, yeah, because here's the thing. Here's what we know now. If you look at California, you look at Texas, you look at Florida, Arizona, here's the interesting thing, because the interesting data to look at is what I call the infectious fatality rate. And what that simply means, in effect, is that the estimated people who've actually got the virus. And one thing, let's understand one thing right now, folks. Just because it says we got 5 million people with the virus, we're probably closer to 30 to 50 million people with the virus. And your herd immunity, it's now, again, there's always been a scientific debate where you begin herd immunity, it may be as low as 20%. It certainly has been in the past. So I don't buy the idea we're going to lose 170,000 more people. What I would say is in case of California, in the case of Texas and Florida, a high percentage of people getting sick now are the younger patients, and they're more likely to live, they're more likely to survive, and the overall death rates, are going to decline. And if you look at the numbers in this way, in April and May, we were looking at 3,000 deaths a day. And in New York, you were looking at 1,000 a day. None of those states that I've talked about had any more than maybe 250 a day. So we're in effect by, in most of these states, and again, all of these states, Texas, California, and Florida, did pay attention to the senior citizen side of the equation. And they're seeing less deaths among the senior citizens, and the overall death rate has been 1/3. So the thing is, you're going to see people die no matter what happens. And to me, we're delaying the inevitable of the herd immunity. And I'm not as convinced as you are that we're going to see that many more deaths. And I will get back to you. Okay, so you go ahead, respond.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I don't know. I just don't understand how that can equal that. We're just going to have to see what happens, with the people that may or may not get sick. It's like if you can have an opportunity to try to figure out a way to move forward while we're waiting for a vaccine, wouldn't you take that opportunity instead of just saying, whatever, just everybody open up? I mean, that's what happened in Georgia, and now so Kemp, retracted his ban on letting people tell, their towns that they can wear masks or make people wear masks, and he retracted whatever he did because people were freaking dying, and nobody wants to, say, oh, I don't care if people die in my state. So I don't see how you can have that opinion.
No, okay. Yeah, well, I think I can, because again, let's say Georgia didn't shut everything back down. Yeah, I mean the mask lawsuit was something was kind of absurd, but the reality, no, he didn't shut everything down. He still kept things open. He may have restricted some of that, but here's the bottom line: right now, Georgia on the hospitalization, on the deaths, on the actual case, the new cases is on the decline. And the numbers they have is about 1/4 what we were seeing in April and May. In other words, and the other aspect comes into play is there's an economic, that's not just the economic cost. Okay, the CDC is now acknowledging increased suicide and increased desires to commit suicide with the black lockdown. And that's the other aspect of the equation. The closing the economy has even another physical life that we don't think about in those regards. I've made the statement at the beginning that we'll see more damage to the economy. The longer the lockdown, the more damage and more people will end up dying overall than opening up too soon. And And if you look at these other states, again, I'm going to look at all these states, their death total on a daily basis was far lower than what we are seeing in April and May. And so if that should tell me that tells me that in effect, that is, that we have, somewhere along the line, you have to basically accept the fact there's a herd immunity. And my problem is, and this is again where it depends on the scientific side of the equation. The equation is, if we're delaying herd immunity, we may end up killing more people down and may end up having a longer spike the longer you delay it out. And that's the debate that's going on between, Scott Atlas, who's now joined the Trump team, and maybe somebody like Tony Fauci. I'm going to go ahead and give you a last word here before the next break.
Right on. I think that I think there's no way to really tell, and I think that obviously we don't know what's gonna happen, but I think that we should do everything that we can do to try to keep people from getting sick.
Well, that's true. I mean, there are things you can do. Wash your hands, social distancing, wear a mask when appropriate. Okay, this is Tom Donelson, Coco Konski, who's out tonight, but Kyle Hester is filling in very admirably and keeping me in line. This is the Donelson Files on the Bachelor News Radio Network.
Tune into You and the Law with Chief Virgil Green and Chief Keith Humphrey. The show focuses on law enforcement and their relationship with the black community while letting you know your legal rights as a citizen when confronted by the police. Listen live every Tuesday night from 7 p.m. to 8 p.m. Eastern at blogtalkradio.com and the podcast every Monday through Sunday at 4 a.m. and 6 p.m. Eastern at thebatchelornews.airtime.pro.
Good. Welcome back to the Donelson Files. Tom Donelson with Kyle Hester filling in for Coco Konski. And next week we have Ian Murray, Tuesday, talk about the socialist temptation. And next Wednesday, there's a good chance we're going to be dealing with some interesting new research from Professor Wilford Riley. So stay tuned for next week. And tomorrow night, Coco Konski joins us. And she'll kind of update some of her projects, and she'll tell us, because like Kyle, she's going to be watching the Democratic Convention, and she'll give us her take on tonight's efforts as well. All right. Okay. Let me throw this out. Okay. Here's the thing. All right. Okay. Because like I stated, my problem is we didn't shut the economy down in 1957 or 68, and the biggest this is the problem I have. If we had the Spanish flu, which basically killed nearly 1% of our population at the time in 1918, right? And you're talking about it would have killed the equivalent of 2 million people. You have a much stronger case. Okay, how do we prevent this from happening? Because that's a much higher death rate as opposed to a virus that's about 1/10 as lethal, and a virus that we do know, strikes certain population more than others. I mean, think of it this way. Here's the risk of you dying if you're between 1 and 4 years old. 1,826,540,000. If you're 5 to 14, 2,563,055. Or if you're healthy without any comorbidity, it's 5 times even higher. If you are 35 to 44, your chances of dying is 1 in 17,681. And if you're healthy 35, 44 with no comorbidity, it's 88,403. In other words, the biggest population risk is if you're 85 and over, your risk of dying is 1 in 158 to 1 in 788. So, and if you're in a nursing home, ditto. You got a much higher risk. So my question would be is this: when do we keep? This is the reason why I'm saying, because there's another cost, not just to the economy per se, making money, but an emotional and physical cost as well, because you're also seeing, you've seen over the past few months delay in other treatment, whether it's cancer or chemotherapy, whether it's testing for cancer, whether it's testing for, these things have also been delayed. And these are, deaths we're not going to see for maybe years down the road. But we'll find out, how this happens. And so which gives me to an interesting question here, and I know is this:
okay.
Is it time for kids to go back to school? Is it time to start opening up the schools?
I think the problem with and those numbers are probably all 100% correct. I'll just make that assumption. But the problem with numbers is that the numbers of people who are going to actually die does not mean that those people aren't going to spread it to people who can die. So it's like, so you open everything up, and then the people who aren't going to die could potentially give it to the people who would. So that's, it's like playing Russian roulette with everyone's family. It's like, so are you going to say that, that your uncle with diabetes, you don't care, that, and I'm sure that you do care, but it has a greater chance of dying if everyone's out doing their own thing and everyone gets it. So then Uncle Jimmy dies. And we didn't think about that part because, but the kids aren't going to die because of the percentage of the chance that they're going to die. And I think that that's part of this whole thing that gets missed.
Well, okay, it's not that one misses that. It's a question of, for example, one of the things, one of the things they did in New York when they looked at some of the studies, the biggest percentage of people getting sick were actually people who were locked down in homes, in their homes. And I know there was a study done in Switzerland where they found, the biggest was not, let's say, people going to bars. It was not people doing protests. It was people at home. That was the biggest risk. By just
and like I think the thing with that is like apartment buildings, and it comes again to the inside thing. That's apartment buildings, prisons, like anything that's like a big place where lots of people go is a problem. So absolutely, that's a thing.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like I say, to me, because as I
look,
stated,
man, this is just a sad. It's a big, sad, ugly situation. Yeah,
it is. But to me, like I say, to me, is that we looked at this virus in a different light 3 months ago. I think we would have a totally different outcome. And I'm not necessarily buy into the argument that we would have had a higher death rate than what we have now, but we would have had a higher infection rate of people and a much closer version of herd immunity. I think we may end up killing more people by delaying it than saving people's lives. And I think and that's the whole theory about herd immunity. When do you sit back and say, okay, it's going to happen, do the best you can, and let's see how quickly we can get through it. This is what the Swedes' policy was from day one, where they said, we feel that more people will be hurt by having a lockdown and that we would lengthen the virus,
Yeah.
But
the Spanish flu lasted 2 years, and I don't think that they, nobody had a plan of locking down versus not locking down. So I think that things are going to run their course regardless of what we do.
Yeah. But it does. That's my point, and that's the point is that, and that's been the point I've been making all along, is that, okay, this is my point along, because I think there's the cost to local communities. Let me put it this way. I would rather have an economy with 7% unemployment, X percent people infected at a little bit higher rate, and go with the idea that we can reduce the death, keep the death rate as low as possible, versus having an economy where you got 10, 14%, and you got communities that simply aren't going to come back, or jobs not coming back, and damage that's going to take years to recover. It's a catch-22.
This may not be, what most of your audience wants to hear, but this is all Trump's fault because there's no leadership from the top on how to clamp this down nationwide like all the other successful countries in the planet have done. We're the only ones that are like we are. We lead the world in this stupidity of this horrible virus.
I disagree totally. Look, we're ranked number 8 on death per capita. There are and most of the countries ahead of us were countries that locked down harder than we did. So you really can't make it.
Who's leading us?
Okay, I'll get you the data right now. First of all, Great Britain. Let me get you right now. I'm going to get you the accurate number as we speak. So that okay. All right. Belgium, Peru, Spain, United Kingdom, Italy, Chile, even Sweden is ahead of us. We're number 8 on that list. And again, you can't.
So
is this
list from like all time, or is this currently, or is this like?
Oh, this is today. This is today. Between the John Hopkins and Worldometer, they update every day. So this is like updated as we speak. I'm looking at the numbers in time. So, yes. Yeah, this is as we speak. So this is and the thing that comes into play here is that, and I'll go back, and if we go back here to the U.S., it's, and this is, you look at, the states that had the hardest lockdown: New Jersey, New York, Massachusetts, Connecticut, Rhode Island, Louisiana, Michigan. All of these states are above the national average in deaths per capita. So I'm not going to make, it's hard to make the argument that we are saving lives on that. And the question comes into play is this: when do governors like Cuomo, who did screw up, take responsibility? Because Cuomo basically killed about 1/5 of the population. I mean, he's 30. We're looking at 33,000 people. New Jersey, 16,000 people. Those 2 states alone are worth about almost 50,000 people. That's nearly a third.
Right, yeah. But they also took down the big. Basically, I think what you're omitting from this conversation is that the curve of deaths dramatically came down, and he did flatten the curve in New York and take it down to almost nothing. I think New York is leading, right now as far as percentages, for all of the virus outbreak. They did it right.
Did they?
So,
I disagree with that because, let's look at these numbers. Let's look at the, death per capita on these numbers here because right now, Florida is on the downside, Texas is on the downside, California is on the downside. Only Arizona is in the top 11 of all of that. And Arizona's numbers are 1/3 of what New York ended up. And it goes back to, again, this is the reason why you look at Sweden versus New York. You're looking at 2 areas, similar population with, in the case of Stockholm, a densely populated city. In the case of New York, you got New York City, densely populated.
Mm-hmm.
If Cuomo had his success record of the Swedes, we'd be looking at 20,000. Actually, he'd be looking at California numbers, which has more than double the population.
You're looking at 2 totally. I mean, it's 2 totally different cities. I mean, it's like New York City of millions of people. Everybody lives in high rises and apartment buildings. So it's all things have to be equal when you're throwing out numbers, and they're not.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing. I mean, I'm going to put it this way. I can look at certain numbers. Okay, here's the thing. I can put a viscopacity. Because one of the things I do every week is, all right, one of the things is every week is let's put it in viscopacity. You take the 4 top Republican states: Ohio, Florida, Georgia, and Texas, compared to California, New York, New Jersey, Illinois, and Pennsylvania. Out of those states, and there's 2 things you can say right off the bat. Number one, those 4 Republican states per capita death is 1/3 to 1/5 of those 4 Democratic states. The only Democrat state of those top 4 populous states, and we're looking at states, about as close to apples we're going to get, is California. Is the only state that basically is lower than the 4 Republican states, or the 4 states that did not have as tight of a lockdown as the Democratic states. So I think I can make that statement that it depends how you want to look at it. regressions, and I know there have been others done as well. That's the reason why we'll have Will O'Reilly, because he was one of the first to look at lockdown states versus, let's say, shelter in place, and he found the same thing. There was no downward trend for lockdown states to begin with. And I want to say in the case of New York, there's a phrase we use, herd immunity. They have reached herd immunity in that state. That's probably the principal reason why you got the decline.
Well,
I
think that there's no way to know. There's no way to know that.
Yeah. No way. I mean, here's the thing. It's like, we're all playing Monday morning quarterback, what should have been done in March. But I'll put it this way. We're not playing Monday morning. But the question is, which is the best way to go forward?
Right.
Yeah. And so from that perspective, now we got about 4 minutes left. So what I want to do here, the last 4 minutes, is, I'm going to ask you one quick question, and then I'm going to allow you the opportunity to talk about, your projects, so people can once again know, how to get all of your stuff. Sports is back. So what's your thoughts about watching a sporting event with nobody in the audience, in the crowd?
Yeah, you know what? I think that it's always better when you have a crowd, for sure. Yeah, that's part of sports. It's part of the excitement of games. But I think that for the real, sports aficionado, then I can watch a game. I mean, I could watch a football game without an audience, yeah. but that's just, I'm like a super fan. So I guess, but yeah, it's definitely part of it.
Yeah. You miss it, but I tell you what, maybe in a way I'm starting to get used to it, because they still have the murmur of the crowd. And I do love the way they like the NBA. It's here's the other interesting aspect, like watching the NBA. What's really fascinating to me is there's no home court advantage. So you have a home team, but there's no home court advantage. So it's almost as if you're really playing on a neutral court, no home court advantage every time. And I think that's
a great point. I hadn't thought about that.
Yeah. And even in baseball, now baseball, you're playing in the other guy's ballpark, and ballparks are different. There's a different field to every ballpark. But you're right. In the NBA and hockey, the same way. It's like there's no home court advantage. I get kicked. I mean, and I look at teams like the Clippers. Well, look at certain teams like, the Clippers and the Lakers. Even though both play in the same arena, Staples Center is pretty much the Lakers' home, and the Clippers just play on the odd days type of deal.
Right.
But reality is when they play final Western Conference final, it doesn't matter. It's like being 7 games on a neutral court. So, all right. I'll tell you what I'm going to do. We got about 2 minutes left. It's Tom Donelson. Tomorrow night, Coco Konski joining. I want to thank Kyle Hester for joining us. You did once again a great job filling in on the famous Coco Konski seat of the left. You did it proud. So why don't you go ahead and tell people again how they can watch your movies and how they can keep tabs on you.
All right. First of all, there's no one can replace Coco. She's awesome, and but I'm happy to be here. You can find me at Kyle D. Hester on Twitter. And actually, what would be really cool is if you go to my Twitter and go to my website for my YouTube page, follow me on YouTube. That will be awesome, because I'm trying to build the channel up and just have some fun, and it's not political or anything like that. It's just kind of goofy, and you learn, I tell about my film stories and stuff like that. I think it's YouTube, Kyle Hester Land. Just look up Kyle Hester on YouTube, and you'll find my channel. So that would be awesome.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Kyle, for joining us. As usual, we love having you on the show and introducing being part of the show. This is Tom Donelson saying good night from the Donelson Files on the Bachelor News Radio Network.
follow you, and I'm not going to follow you and give you personal protection. And I'm telling you, for your own benefit, you had better turn around and get out of this area. You're not going to the courthouse in a group under the condition that you come here, and I'll assure you that.
All we would like to do, sir, is to go to the
Courthouse is closed. There's no business there.
We don't want to go in the courthouse. All we want to do is go to the lawn of the courthouse, kneel in prayer, and we'll gladly return.
You take your prayers back to your church. That's a proper place to pray.
Sir,
I'm sure that God will hear your prayer just as well down there as it will up here, but you're not going on this courthouse alone.
Sir, whenever there are men who are in sinful conditions, prayer should be uttered wherever they are.
Well, why don't you pray where you are? Go back down there and pray. You think you're lily white? You think you're not sinful?
No.
Well, then go back to your church and pray.
Well, sir, can we pray together, you and I?
You do your praying. I do mine, big boy. You don't pray for me. I don't want you to pray for me.
Well, will you pray for us?
Because I don't think your prayers get above your head.
Well, will you pray for us?
No, I'm not going to pray for you. I'll tend to my business. You tend to yours. Now, you better move these people out of here.
Sir,
I'm trying to protect you,
sir. Sir,
I don't have to love anybody I don't want to love.
Sir,
You do your own loving. You love your little niggas. I love who I please.
Do you believe in equal justice for all?
I believe in justice.
Do you believe in equal justice?
I don't believe in equal nothing. There's no two people in this world alike, and they are not equal under any terms or conditions. There's no two peas in the world alike. No two pieces of money nor nothing else.
And sir, are you saying that if I have a quarter and I'm black and you have a quarter and you white, then my quarter isn't as worth as much as your
That's
quarter?
your quarter. I'll decide,
my quarter is worth?
I'll decide what my quarter is worth. You use yours and I'll use mine.
You buy you a catfish sandwich and yours.
Hey, we want to welcome our listeners to this edition of You and the Law. You have just listened to a recording courtesy of Facebook in reference to a 1965 encounter between Jimmy Webb and the deputy sheriff in Selma, Alabama. Again, this was in 1965 in Selma, Alabama, where Jimmy Webb led a group of peaceful protesters to the courthouse. The group was met by the local law enforcement, and the voice you heard was the deputy sheriff, L.C. Croker. And we wanted to start the show off by playing that audio clip. And because over the next several weeks, we will have a series of shows on You and the Law addressing law enforcement building bridges with the African American community. And this also kind of goes into, some recent events with protesters. So I've got my co-host, the host of the show, who goes by T Swag. How you doing today, sir?
What's going on, my brother? How you doing, man?
Man, I'm doing good, man. It's good to hear your voice, man. I feel like I can reach out and touch you.
No, man, we got distance between us, man. But hey, I'm gonna give you a high five.
Hey, all right, we'll do it. We'll do the elbow thing. We'll do the elbow. Yeah. All right. So Keith, man. I mean, when we were talking about, the topics of what we were going to put together for the listeners this week, we talked about putting together a series of shows, talking about, building the bridges between the law enforcement and the African American community. And I tell you, Keith, that when I found that video and listened to it, and I encourage our listeners, if you haven't seen this video on YouTube, you just type in the name Jimmy Webb, and just that encounter, Keith, with law enforcement with that deputy as they were trying to walk to the courthouse. Really, it kind of puts you, when the black community talks about the distrust between the police with current events and past events, and this was just in 1965. And what was so striking about that audio clip was to hear this sheriff deputy tell this young black man that, you know, his quarter did not mean the same as his quarter did. I mean, it was just that simple, that even though here's a man who's supposed to uphold the law and supposed to protect, and they were actually, in some manner, trying to protect the protesters from the other violent protesters. But here was a young man in a group trying to go and pray on the grounds of the courthouse, and they were met with resistance.
Yeah, man. You know what's interesting about that? That was during our lifetime, and so when you really think about it, you and I don't consider ourselves old, and so that happened during our lifetime, and you know, it's amazing. You can just see that as clear as day. That any of the civil rights marches that you watch or you read about, you can picture that based on some of the things that are going on in today's times. And I was talking to a young man in Norman that's about to be the first Muslim officer promoted in the history of that department, and he was talking about 1968, 1969, and he's at least 15, 16 years younger than you and I, Burbs, and he was like, Chief, do you realize that was just, you know, Martin Luther King's assassination was just 52 years ago? I said, man, yes, I was alive during that time. And it just all of those things that are going on right now throughout the nation just help us come back and vividly remember the things that we remember, the things we've seen, the things we've read about, and you know, it's just amazing that just seems so not so long ago, and to hear someone who's entrusted with the safety of people's safety, that was there for the safety of the individuals who were trying to vote. All they wanted to do was vote. That's all.
Yeah.
And they were, they were treated that way by a member of law enforcement.
Yeah, and I'll say this, you know, while protesters are not met with the same type of language today, as we heard in the audio clip, we have seen peaceful protesters met with acts of violence from law enforcement officers. With recent events, you continue to see the bridge between becoming more divided. You know, instead of the bridge coming closer, it's becoming more divided. And it's why you have groups like Black Lives Matter and other activist groups who are, you know, protesting, peaceful protesting. And as we know, you know, a lot of these protests have not been peaceful. And you do have people who are instigating some violence. But for the most part, you have a lot of peaceful protesting going on. And again, Keith, you know, just like you said, I mean, you know, these things happen in our lifetime. And for those listeners who are listening to us, as well as even some of the older listeners. So, you know, Keith, I just want to encourage our go ahead.
But Virgil, check this out. You know, I think there are some law enforcement. I think there's a small percentage of law enforcement executives out there, whether it be sheriffs, constables, or police chiefs, that really don't see, or they'll debate you whether excessive force and violence are the same. They'll debate you on that because it falls under the umbrella of the force continuum. It falls under the umbrella of control and the actions of meeting the resistance of a person. But they'll argue with you that excessive force, the amount of force used greater than necessary to conduct an arrest or detention is not the same as violence. And so I think that's one of the things that also people have a hard time of comprehending of why is that not violence? What's different than that, or someone assaulting you? You know.
Exactly. Hey, Keith, we're coming up on our first break. We're going to take a quick break, and you're listening to You and the Law on the Bachelor News Radio Network.
If you want real discussions on politics, social issues, racial issues, and other topics, then tune into the Bachelor News Radio Show. Listen live every Monday and Thursday from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. Eastern at blogtalkradio.com. And if you missed the show, you can listen every Monday through Saturday at 8 a.m. and 3 p.m. Eastern, and every Sunday at 5 a.m. and 3 p.m. at thebatchelornews.airtime.pro. Listen and be informed.
Hey, we want to welcome our listeners back to You and the Law on the Bachelor News Radio Network. We want to remind our listeners that the calling number to the show is 646-929-0130. That's 646-929-0130. And if you have a comment, let the show producer know that you've got a comment, or if you would like to come on the air with us. So you'll hear some silence, but just don't be radio shy. Come on and talk with us. This is what this show is about. It's about connecting with our listeners, Keith, and getting their input and just making this show very informative to where we can interact with our listeners. And again, I think this is a great topic, and hopefully we'll get some comments. And also, you know, if you can also go into the chat room and you can leave your messages in the chat room. And so I'm excited about this show, Keith. I think it's a good topic. And, you know, there's a lot of police departments that are doing a lot of good things, but then these are conversations that we have to have in order to really make sure that we are building those bridges that everybody deserves, and every person of color wants to have a good relationship with their police department.
Man, what is so difficult about being proactive? I mean, why is that such a difficult task? Why is it so difficult to be professional, and why is it so difficult to talk about, have conversations about, you know, people call them uncomfortable conversations. I don't think it's uncomfortable. I mean, you know, as an African American, I've been in comfortable positions pretty much all my life. So why is it difficult to talk about, you know, cultural competency and cultural diversity, and talk about emotional intelligence? Why is that always a bad thing when it comes to law enforcement and having those discussions?
Yeah, and again, you have, you know, the other side. You have the white officers who feel like, man, you know, why you guys keep talking about this? That was in 1965, or that was in 1975. You know, we're in 2020, you know, but you still see some of the same type of things that have occurred between the police and the black community. And for us, as being in law enforcement, it's having that conversation and building that bridge to make sure that these things do not continue to happen in our minority communities, whether it's a black community or Latino community. There has to be, law enforcement has to go about doing a better job in really repairing the bridges that have been broken. And when you go back and you look at this and you hear this clip that took place in 1965, a lot of those things, nothing had really changed a whole lot, Keith. I mean, yeah, some things have changed, but you still had police officers across the country, especially in the South, who were very resistant to minorities and their rights. Basically saying, go ahead.
I will tell you one of the most hardest things to get law enforcement, especially, you know, both black and white officers, because I want to make sure that the audience realizes that that's a two-sided coin when you talk about officers that have issues with people of color or whites, and that's black and white officers, Hispanic officers, Asian officers. there are those small percentages, or those that there is that group of each culture, ethnicity, that has a problem even with their own culture and ethnicity. I brought a topic up not too long ago in my department. I just asked a simple question and made a general statement, and I was asked by a black officer, why would you bring that? Why did you start that? Why did you bring that topic up, and what kind of response were you expecting? And, my thing was I was expecting adult dialogue, open dialogue, starting a dialogue and see what people think. You don't have to agree with me, but let's just have a dialogue. And so I think that badge is, when people put those badges on, man, some people put those badges on, they change, man. Some do, not all. Some change, the majority change for the best. But there are those that are so entangled with that badge and feel that badge is defines who they are. They get badge heavy. And when you get badge heavy, you make mistakes and you forget about why you became a police officer, and you forget about the oath that you took. It's all about the power. And that's the sad thing. If we've got to get past that in order to regain trust in our communities.
Well, Keith, that's a good point you make, because, a lot of the older black police officers, a lot of those guys work in the same communities their whole entire career. Everybody knew them. People at the corner store knew them. People at the liquor stores knew him. Everybody knew who that officer was, whether it was walking a beat or whether he drove in that area. And you have a newer generation of police officers who it's not so much about connecting with the community. And I think that's something that, and I'm going to ask you this question: Do you see that is something that is really upon the older black police officers to really mentor the young black police officers to say, hey, I walked the beat. Like here in Oklahoma City, there was a police officer I knew well named Stone. He walked Northeast 23rd for decades, and everybody knew him from Broadway all the way to ML King in Northeast Oklahoma City. And you had a lot of other older black police officers who were well known, but nowadays the community don't really know who these officers are. They may see them one or two times, and it may be in a good situation, it may not be. So do you think it's upon, and that's another part of building bridges, do you think it's upon the older generation of black police officers to really mentor the young officers and say, hey, listen, yeah, I know you may want to move around, but have some kind of connection with the community that you're serving?
Yeah, I think absolutely. I think mentoring is amazing, and it's a good thing something that has to be done. But the younger officers have to be receptive of it, and then you have to in the academy and in field training. That's why you have to have the right people teaching at the academy and the right field training officers to bring home that importance of getting out of that police car, walking and talking, and having dinner at people's homes. We got to get out of that fear that everybody's trying to hurt us. I think it's, and I've said this before, we do ourselves a disservice by not by being paranoid. It's okay to be cautious and safe, but I think we become so paranoid that we believe that everybody wants to hurt us, and everybody, when people say certain things, they're trying to disrespect us and things like that. So I think it is important for those older officers, those veteran officers, and those officers that retired to tell their story and tell how they were able to, especially think about the African American officers back in the 40s and 50s, that basically that's all they were allowed to do is foot patrol. And then you look at the amount of crime that was in those communities compared to the other communities, it was very low or non-existent, because those officers had to. They were forced to be on foot, but they took advantage of that, and they were able to meet get out and meet the citizens. And a lot of those officers were from those communities.
Yeah, they were, and that's a good point, to make that these officers, back, what, just maybe even 30, 40 years ago, Keith, they could not arrest if they did make an arrest, a white officer had to come and pick up the person that they arrested and take them to jail. The black officers couldn't do that, and so they were confined to that area that they was assigned to, and so when you look at crime, crime is all, there definitely was crime, but not to the level that we're seeing, the way we're seeing it now. Yeah, of course, cities get bigger, but at the same time, you've got you've got more individuals who have a better connection with the community, with the churches, and with the youth in the community. Because I guarantee you, there was a lot of people, a lot of young men and women growing up who were told by their parents, hey, you don't want to mess with Officer so-and-so, because Officer so-and-so is going to come home and tell mama and daddy. So there was a little bit more of an understanding about what was going on in that community.
Yeah, it was. You're absolutely right, and it wasn't about fear. It was about respect. I think now there's a lack of respect for law enforcement, and there's also fear. When you see things that are occurring throughout the nation, you kind of understand that, and we've got to get that. We've got to earn that respect back, and try to diminish the fear that individuals have in us, especially communities of color.
Yeah, and Keith, one of the things, especially with the recent events that have taken place, that have been really highly publicized, with the death of black men and black women, across the country, and you still see that divide where there's a reason why this happened, and the reason why it happened is because of the actions of what this African American person, male or female, did that led to their death. And so then when you hear conversations like that, then the people in the black community, they're very intelligent, and the question is, I'm looking at the same thing that you're looking at. How you formed a different opinion about what we both have seen, and so that continues that divide between the black community and law enforcement. And one of the things, law enforcement is going to be around. Everybody's going to be around, but how do you coexist and make the best of it, and make things better for your community? And one of the things, Keith, as we talk about this topic, our listeners, if there's something that you're doing in your community that's building bridges with your local police department, feel free to call in and let us know what you're doing and how that's working, if it's working or if it isn't working, and what has been some of the challenges that you have faced as an activist, whether you're involved with Black Lives Matter or whatever organization you're involved with, NAACP or whatever it may be. Let us know what you've done in your communities to a better bridge with your local law enforcement. Keith, we're getting ready to come up on to take our next break, but this is again a great topic that we hopefully our listeners will be engaged with us and share your comments and some feedback with us throughout the show. But Keith, this is a good topic, brother.
Yeah, it's an amazing topic. And I'm excited about it. So I guess we'll go to commercial break.
Yeah. Hey, you're listening to You and the Law on the Bachelor News Radio Network.
This is Dr. Larry Fedowa, host of the Dr. Larry Show on the Bachelor News Radio Network, inviting you to listen live every Wednesday evening from 7 to 8 p.m. Eastern Time at blogtalkradio.com and the podcast every Monday through Saturday at 11 a.m. Eastern Time at thebatchelornews.airtime.pro. I am called the philosopher of current events, an independent, open-minded conservative with my own ideas. If you are interested in advertising or having your own show, email us at labachelor40@gmail.com.
Hey, welcome back to You and the Law on the Bachelor News Radio Network. Hey, we want to remind our listeners that there is a great line of shows that are on the Bachelor News Radio Network. And one of those shows is Life Cafe Broadcast for Maximizing Life Family Worship Center, located at 2920 East Market Street in Greensboro, North Carolina. The broadcast features Bible study, like atmosphere, while taking a laid-back approach to learning the words of God, served with a free continental breakfast. Listen to the broadcast every Saturday evening at 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time at the thebatchelornews.airtime.pro. And if you're interested in having your own show, or if you're interested in advertising with us, reach out to us at labachelor40@gmail.com. That's labachelor40@gmail.com. And, we want to, this is a topic that we're talking about this evening is building the bridge between law enforcement, a divided America. We've seen so many things, Keith, over just this past several months that has really tested law enforcement and tested the Black community, tested the Latino communities with how they interact with law enforcement in these challenging times. And not to mention that we are in the middle of a pandemic and in the middle of a pretty contested presidential election.
Yeah, it's trying time. 2020 has been it's been a very tragic and trying year for the nation and the world. And how we come out of this year is going to speak volumes for the resiliency of the men and women of this country and this world. But it is trying times, and us, it's you never know what's going to happen from day to day.
No, you never do. And one of the things is that we with the protesting that continues to happen, and I think in Portland and in Seattle, they're still dealing with a large scale protest. There's other protesting that even in Oklahoma City, there's protesting that's occurred almost weekly. And then there's even in Louisville, Kentucky, with Breonna Taylor's death, there's still protesting going on there. So the law enforcement leadership is really going to have to meet with community leaders, meet with these community activists, whether it be and I'm going to ask this question, Keith. Why is it such a resistance to Black Lives Matter organizations? It's almost kind of like there's been this label that has been put on this organization, is almost like it's some terrorist group, and they're out to kill police officers. They're out to do all these bad things, but nobody is looking at the good things that Black Lives Matter has done across this country, and they definitely put a spotlight on things that have occurred in the law enforcement community.
I can tell you why, Virgil, because there is a sense of, or there is a perception, or let me just say, there's a reality of people not wanting to hear the word black. It's just like when we talk about Noble, or we talk about MBPA, or we talk about NFBPA, National Organization of Black Law Enforcement Executives, National Black Police Association, National Association of Black Public Administrators, Forum of Black Public Administrators, NAACP. It causes people to be nervous because people think that we believe we're superior. No, it's the fact that we want a seat at the table. And for so long, we haven't had this seat at the table. And what you're hearing from Black Lives Matter is that we want to be respected. Our lives matter also. Somebody asked me, one time, should it be Black Lives Matter also? No. I have no problem with Black Lives Matter. Are there people that take advantage of that title and they're opportunists and they do things under that umbrella? Absolutely. But you hear me say things like the majority. The Black Lives Matter movement, it caused a lot of positive things throughout the nation when you start talking about police reform and you start talking about having dialogue with police chiefs, having police chiefs coming out and admitting that there has been some injustices done over the years when it comes to communities of color. So I don't know. I think it's the same thing when you start talking about Noble and NBPA and FBPA, like I said a few minutes ago. That makes people nervous. People believe that that's a segregated organization. But what I will say, if you go to any of the national conferences or any of the functions, you see a large number of whites, Hispanics, Asian attendees and members in these groups, just like you see whites, Asians, Hispanics as part of Black Lives Matter. But I think sometimes people can't get past the name, and they automatically think that means radical, that means disruptive, and that's totally not the case. It just basically means our lives matter. We want to be respected, where respect is overdue.
Well, and you're right. I mean, when you said one of the people look at it as if it's a radical group. These are radical people who are a part of it, and then you have people who, on the law enforcement side of the community, all lives matter or blue lives matter, and so
they're missing the point, Virgil. They're missing the point. When you say things like that, you're missing the point of the movement. It's not saying that everybody else doesn't matter. It's the fact of saying it's time to realize that we have something as African Americans to bring to the table, and our lives mean just as much as anyone else.
Yeah,
they're missing the point.
And it goes back to just listening to the audio of 1965, where you probably still have some of those same things that are occurring in law enforcement in some police departments somewhere in America. You probably still have an officer with the same views as that officer had in 1965. And so, when you cannot dismiss it and say it does not exist, it does exist. And especially when, even in the law enforcement community, there's a bridge that needs to be built better between black police officers and white police officers. We've seen, we talked several weeks ago on the show where a young lady was pulled over who was in the federal law enforcement, and she shared this Facebook Live video about how she was treated on this traffic stop. And she was in a uniform, and she was issued a citation. And she said, hey, if I was speeding, I deserve a ticket, but I knew I wasn't speeding. But she didn't try to argue make her point on the side of the highway. She was just going to go to court and deal with it in court. But it just goes to show you that level of respect, and it comes back to respect, because I have never seen, and I'll ask the listeners out there, have you ever seen a white police officer, the video about him being pulled over by a black officer, being issued a citation by a black officer? I don't think I've ever seen such a video. circling on social media. And I don't want to make this out to be a black and a white. Yeah, I don't want. This is not about black and white. This is about respect and how we even treat each other, and the fact that there is a bridge between police and police. So, last week, one of the listeners.
Virgil,
yeah, go ahead.
Virgil, let me say this, man, and to the listeners out there, we thank you for tuning in. We enjoy this. Virgil and I talk about our show all the time with each other and the producer. But this show isn't about to talk about the comfortable topics. And,
exactly.
I'm sorry if people feel that we're focusing just on black and white issues. That's not the case. This is historical issues issues that have been faced throughout hundreds of years. So we're not bringing up anything that's new. We're not bringing up anything that's not true. As you know, we continue to talk about the positive things. The majority of the police officers, I'll say this again, 90+% of the police officers and the police departments out here are doing the right thing. But you do have that percentage of the police officers, let's say 5% of the police departments and 5% of the police officers that are causing 95% of the problems. And they're not willing to change. Let's talk about the sheriff in Florida who refuses to follow the mandate about the mask. Now, if the sheriff is saying something as simple as the mask, I'm not going to follow, and this is a public safety and public health thing, what other things is he allowing his officers to do?
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. It is, we want to remind our listeners, the calling number to the show is the calling number to the show is 646-929-0130. That's 646-929-0130. If you got any comments or if you'd like to come on air and share your thoughts about the topic that we're talking about. And Keith, we have a question that was sent to us, that was sent through email, asking, have you noticed an increase in hate crimes? If not, do you anticipate an increase coming from upcoming elections?
You know what, Virgil? I think since 2008 there has been a number of increase in hate crimes. The problem with that is every state has a different hate crime law. And so where some are very specific regarding ethnicity, your gender, your sexual preference, there are those states that outline that anytime someone that fits in that category is attacked specifically being for that reason, it's a hate crime. But there are those states that they don't have hate crime bills on the books. So it's really difficult to determine the actual number if there's been an increase or a decrease. But I will say that there have been an increase in talking to chiefs around the state and reading. There has been an increase of some of the things that we would consider hate crimes if every state had a bona fide hate crimes law. Nooses, racial slurs, people being attacked. We saw the one the other week where the young man was in the wooded area and he was being held down by a group of people. So it's happening out there, but the actual numbers. But I'm based on what I've seen and talking to other law enforcement executives, I believe there is an increase.
Yeah, well, Keith, and I just found information put out by the FBI. Back in 2018, there was a 16-year high in 2018 in an upswing in violence against Latinos and assaults on Muslim and Arab Americans. So, those are some numbers from 2018. And so, and like you stated, each state classifies certain crimes different. There may be a federal hate crime. There may not be a state a hate crime. It may fall under some type of assault. So those numbers are not really, that data isn't really collected. But Keith, we're going to jump into our next break. Listen to You and the Law on the Bachelor News Radio Network.
Greetings and great day, everyone. I am Elder Janelle Strickland, host of the Life Cafe radio broadcast from Maximizing Life Family Worship Center. I invite you to tune in every Saturday from 5 to 6 p.m. Tune in, maximize your life with the Word of God, and be blessed. Only on the Bachelor News Radio Network.
Join Barry Barnes for Locker Talk on the Bachelor Pad Network as he presents NFL news and evaluates players. Fridays at 9 a.m. Eastern at blogtalkradio.com.
Hey, welcome back to You and the Law on the Bachelor News Radio Network. We want to remind our listeners the call-in number to the show is 646-929-0130. That's 646-929-0130. And we also want to remind you that you can follow You and the Law on our social media platforms. You can follow us on Facebook at You and the Law. You can follow us on Instagram. That's You_and the Law. And you can also follow us on Twitter at You the Law 1. So you can connect with us through social media. You can send us comments. You can like our page. You can if you have a topic that you would like for us to talk about, please do so in the comment section. But we want to just, thank our listeners for listening to us today, and also just share with your family and friends and everybody about that you listen to You and the Law on the Bachelor News Radio Network, and the information that we talk about is very informative, and it definitely sparks the conversation with you all about things that matter to you and what's going on in the Black community. And Keith, this is a good topic of building bridges with police and the minority communities.
Bert, just go back to that last question that the listener sent in. Based on the unknown, I have mandated that there be no leave the week of the elections for my department, just based on the unknown, just based on what's going on in the nation right now with the, George Floyd, incident, and then you got Portland, and you've got the other areas, and we just don't know how heated this election is going to get. And then with the COVID, based on the fact that we believe that's just going to be just the unknown, I've said that no one in the department is allowed to take that week off. So we've frozen our leave for that week.
Mm-hmm. Well, and Keith, that's another interesting topic, especially with everything that we're dealing with COVID, with this presidential election, how things are so divided, and just the rhetoric that is going on every single day, and how that is playing into things that occur, and the fact that law enforcement is at the forefront of every event that happens. If there is protesting, law enforcement officers at the forefront of that. If there's any kind of violence, we've got our police officers that are dealing with that. And so there's definitely going to be some challenging times, unfortunately, over the next 80-something days leading up to this election. And I just don't see it to be getting any better because of the rhetoric that is coming out and the things that's being shared on social media. So, people really need to be mindful. And again, what I tell everybody and what I do, I educate myself on things before I make a comment about something, because again, there's a lot of false information that's being put out especially on social media.
Yeah, I agree. I think Michael from Arkansas has a question for me. Go ahead, Michael.
Hi, how are you doing, Chiefs? The question I have for you is that I wonder, how do you take the next step from being a law enforcement administrator to being a chief law enforcement?
How do you take the next step from being, say that again?
How do you become a chief police? How do you take that next step on your journey?
Yeah, well, I think what he's asking, Keith, is, going from a frontline patrol officer, maybe moving up through the ranks of a sergeant, lieutenant, captain. What is that next step for an individual who's trying to become a police chief in the positions that we hold?
Well, number one, that's a good question. Thank you for that, Michael. That's a mentoring question. And one of the things that I always say is that you've got to have it in your heart. Becoming a chief is really nothing that you do that you want to do at the last minute. There has to be some part of you that wants to make change, and everything that you do, every assignment that you take, you have to have vision, and you have to be willing to make change and make the difficult decisions. What I always tell young men and young women is that whatever rank you currently are, I always think of the next highest rank. So if you're an officer, think like a sergeant. If you're a sergeant, think like a lieutenant. If you're a lieutenant, think like a captain, and so forth. And be mindset. Always be a student of the profession. Take those difficult assignments, the ones that no one wants, and learn from those. You learn every day is a learning experience. Every day is a job interview. But you have to want to do it, and you have to be willing to accept the fact that everybody's not going to like you. You might not be well liked, but as long as you're respected, that's the main thing.
Okay. And I have to tell
you. Michael,
let
me just say this. And Michael, one more thing. You have to have the support of your family. You can't make that decision on your own. You have to sit down and have those long discussions with your family. You have to have those long discussions with yourself and those long thinking periods of, am I cut out for this job? Does my family support me? Because there's going to be a lot of long hours that you're going to put in, a lot of events. And so those are two main things. You have to have strong faith.
Yeah. And I have to tell you, Chief, I recognize the voice of Michael in Arkansas. He was one of my former officers, actually a former lieutenant in Helena, West Helena. So I spent 2 years around him and definitely tried to encourage him to definitely grow his law enforcement career. And I think that's another thing that's important, Keith. And as you know, it's that police chief being a good mentor to the officers that are under them and giving them the outlets to grow and putting them in a position to learn more, because at the end of the day, you and I, we're not going to be police chiefs forever, and there's a newer generation coming up. So he's a good police officer, and I'm hoping that he one day gets to that level of where he wants to be at.
Well, I think he will. I believe it'll happen. I believe it'll happen.
Yeah, it's a good guy. Hey, we definitely appreciate your call, Officer Thomas, and thank you for listening to You and the Law on the Bachelor News Radio Network. And continue to be a loyal listener, sir.
Will do.
All right, thank you. Hey, Keith, we got another. Hey, Keith, we got another question from another listener. And it's related to the media. Can a member of the media ever be charged with incitement? Can they say what they want in every case situation? And can they hide under the First Amendment? So that's a question related to the news media. What's your comments on that, Keith?
Oh, absolutely. The First Amendment doesn't give you a right to break the law. There are media personnel that are arrested all the time for attempting to cross crime scenes or disobeying the governmental order, or and then think about this: there are those individuals who claim to be part of the media. I mean, they actually claim to have the credentials because they feel that they can get away. But your average media person is not going to do anything to break the law. They're going to stay within their First Amendment rights. They know what they can do and what they can't do. But there are going to be those that are going to push the envelope. But no, you can't hide behind First Amendment rights. Just like as a police officer, we're not supposed to hide behind the badge and commit criminal acts and think we can get away with it. So, of course, yeah, they can be held accountable for their actions if they break the law, and there have been some that have.
Yeah. Well, and Keith, I think one of the things with the things we've seen over the past several weeks and months, where the news media, they've got a job to do, and that's reporting the news. And I think there's a group, there's people who feel like the news media is only reporting certain parts of the news story, and to some degree that they feel like that they may be inciting certain parts of what is occurring, and they're playing off of this one side with the emotions of certain groups. So, but like you said, you do have a lot of people out here who are claiming to be part of the media. They may not be part of the, as certain people say, the mainstream media, but you've got bloggers out here. You've got freelance people reporting, doing everything. And so I think those are the individuals that you really have to be concerned about, because it's what they're disseminating and putting on social media. How accurate is that information that they're putting out to the public?
The sad thing, Virgil, before, we go to another break, the sad thing about it.
Actually, we won't have to go to another break. We're going to go.
Okay. The sad thing about it is you have these amazing reporters out here, but what happens is they get it back to the station, and their producer cuts it down to what they want to put on TV. They'll have the entire story. It's just that whatever that producer, and it also depends on what time of the year it is. If it's sweeps week, they want the ratings. It just depends on what they put on. But there's some reporters that get the whole story. Unfortunately, it's cut down before it's aired, by not by them, but their bosses.
Yeah, exactly. And you and I, we've definitely done interviews with the news media, and about maybe a minute and 2 seconds is put on air, or maybe 2 minutes of it is put on the air. So a lot of things occur once things get back to the news station that is not put out, and so that's why you've got. And again, it kind of goes back to this conspiracy theory that some people have about the news media. And I have to say this, kid. I think there is with everything that is going on, and I made a comment earlier today about when you have a politician who is planting the seeds about theories about the COVID virus. Now all of a sudden the seed is being planted about the postal system. The seed has been planted about fake news. And all of these things continue to get so much media attention. And for me, I ask myself this question: why is the news media feeding into all of these here seeds that are being planted? If you know it's not true, why are you even giving it the time of day? Why even talk about it? Because the more you talk about it, it just becomes a part of the news cycle, Keith.
Yeah, those are just the times we're in, man.
Yeah. But, hey, we want to remind our listeners, you're listening to You and the Law on the Bachelor News Radio Network. And we want to remind you that the calling number to the show is 646-929-0130. And we also want to remind you that if you can't listen to the show live, you can also catch the show on our rebroadcast. And the rebroadcast shows are, you can catch those every day at 4 a.m. and 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time at the thebatchelornews.airtime.pro. That's the rebroadcast shows of You and the Law at 4 a.m. and 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. That would be 3 a.m. and 5 p.m. Central Standard Time at the thebatchelornews.airtime.pro. So just reminding you, there's still many ways of you to listen to the show. If you can't catch us live, you can catch those rebroadcast shows, Keith. But the topic of today and will be for many shows to come over the next couple of weeks is building bridges. For law enforcement, understanding the communities that they're serving is something that is really needed a lot more now. It's needed more now than it's ever been. And we go back to how we started the show off, Keith, with that 1965 audio clip in Selma, Alabama. And I guess my question is to you and to our listeners, has law enforcement waited too long to rebuild those bridges?
Yeah, I think we're doing a good. I think we're doing a good job. We could do better, and I think right now we're in a position where some police chiefs don't know what more they can do. I think that's where I think it's a holding pattern right now. What do we do? Do we continue to do the same thing that we've been doing? Do we try to do new things? If we do try new things, will they appear legitimate, or will they just appear that we're just doing something just because? So I think there's that sense of the unknown out there. But, the question Michael asked earlier, you just got to keep doing it. You got to keep doing it. You can't be afraid to try new things or go back to the drawing board or even try things that you tried before with a little different spin on it. They don't put you in these positions and pay you what they pay you to go off in a corner and just wilt. You gotta face the issues that are going on at the time. So,
well, and another thing, Keith, you have to ask yourself these questions for the people that are in leadership, whether you are a mayor, governor, or especially on a local level. Your mayors, are you really connecting with the right people in the communities? Because oftentimes you see certain individuals who are well known to certain individuals who they may serve on this committee, or they may serve on this advisory panel, or they may become a part of something and you're missing out on the key people who really need to be sitting at the table, such as your Black Lives Matter, such as all your other organizations, NAACPs, and your Latino organizations, your LGBTQ community. All of those people need to have a voice at the table and not just a certain group, because what you see a lot of times is if this is a well-known pastor, they're going to be at the table, but somebody that is not well-known who may have a better connection to the community, they may not have a seat at the table. So that's a part of building those bridges as well, Keith.
Absolutely. We just had a chop it up with the cop. We just had a chop it up with the cop at a local African-American barbershop, man. It was amazing. I
that's a great program.
So much at home, man. Yeah.
I felt so much. And that's a great program you guys got. Yeah,
I appreciate
that's a great
that.
program. Well, hey, sir, we're coming to the top of the hour, and we definitely want to remind our listeners. We want to thank you for listening to You and the Law on the Bachelor News Radio Network. And Chief Swag, we'll see you next time, sir.
All right, man. And to the listeners out there, God bless. Thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you. All right, my brother. Love you, man.
All right, love you too, brother. Hey, you're listening to You and the Law on the Bachelor News Radio Network. Have a good evening.